Yeah, hello everybody. Nice to have you all with us today. We're here today with Rachel from Rachel Thomas Studio. I'm going to let Sophie Buick, who's a third year FMM student, introduce her. But I'd just like to say thank you to Rachel and to Alice, who works with Rachel, for joining us today. Over to you then, Sophie.
Our first question is, when working with brands such as Off-White and Hermes, comprehensive house styles and branding, how do you negotiate your own creative input?
I think it's quite an interesting question, because I think what happens when you work and when you're out there and you have a profile and you have a body of work behind you, people kind of are attracted to you for your style already, and often they've kind of written a brief that is around your work so that they then ask you to do it. It's not like strictly like that, but I think it's you're in there, you fit the brief essentially, and they feel that you will bring something to it, or you will execute it in a way that is in line with the thinking, really. So I think sometimes it's not really about, like, I'm already there, if you see what I mean. I know that if I make decisions based on the sorts of decisions I would make if I was doing an editorial, or if I had free reign, that they will be in line with their thinking. But I am also, essentially, they are my clients, so I'm really responsive to what it is they want. So I'll go through a process of suggesting things that I feel are appropriate. But if they don't like something, or if they feel that they want to suggest something else, then it's sort of a bit of a back, and it's very much a back and forth. So they'll suggest something, I'll suggest something else, and we'll go back and forth until together we have come up with what it is that feels right, essentially.
Great, amazing, thank you. Could you please tell us about how you got involved in the Delcourt project, and did you work with him at Gucci?
I didn't work with him at Gucci, and I've never heard of him, because I'm not a massive fashion head. Like I've worked in fashion for a long time. Like, my first job was in Vivienne Westwood's shop, King's Road and World's End, and I was really into fashion from a young age. But I'm not like so plugged in as much as maybe you guys might be, because you're younger and I didn't study fashion. But I quickly respond to it, because I do understand it, I think, But basically, the art director on that is someone called David Lane, and he is an art director that I work with quite a bit. I work with him on Hermes, on some of the projects that I do with them. And he has a magazine called The Gourmand, which I've contributed to a lot. And we've got a really good working relationship. And I think, there's certain briefs, I think, for an art director that come in and they just think, oh, this person's going to be right for it. So he asked me to work on it. And partly as well because he was wanting to work with a photographer, filmmaker called Dan Tobin Smith, who I work with a lot. So it was kind of a team thing as well. It was a bit like, okay, Rachel and Dan can do this. But it was a pleasure to work with Daniel Delcourt. And I did watch his show just now, his debut show, and I thought it was great. And I understood from when I took the project on, that he had been at Gucci, and, he'd obviously been quite key in certain kind of establishing certain kind of looks and stuff there. So it was very challenging, that project, actually, very challenging. And but I was pleased that we did it.
Cool. So where do you get your resources from for your shoots, and what do you do with them afterwards?
So as you can see from the website, like, Alice, if you maybe look at thumbnails and you just kind of take a glance at the kind of projects that are on that page, that's obviously just a section of it. You can see that the projects range from, having working with models, working with only still life, working on some events, working maybe sometimes with things that are completely fabricated from scratch, sometimes working with things that are ready-made, and then working in moving image and stills. And we have worked across quite a lot of different, not only sort of mediums, but also scales and ideas. So we might be pulling something, from, we have some very regular things that we work with. We have established suppliers. Like we have a set builder that we work with, or a series of set builders, but we tend to try and work with one only because we really like him, and if we can, it makes it simple. So we have a set builder that we do all our construction with. We have certain suppliers that we work with for like special effects. We have other suppliers that we work with for model making, and then we make some things in the studio, and we also source things. You know, from online, we try less and less to work with Amazon if we can, because we basically we are becoming, like everybody is, more and more aware of what we're using, what we're consuming, and what happens to it afterwards. So for instance, we just did a project for Colville that last week, which is a fashion brand, and everything we did was in cardboard. It would have been easy for us to recycle it, but it would have been actually not recycled because it was painted, but we could have given it another home. And also because it's cardboard, it's not such a kind of scary material. But in the end, the brand took it to use it for something else. So I think brands and us, everybody is more aware of wanting to design things with a kind of an element of recyclability about them, you know, and set is very, very pertinent in that area because you are making things, you know. But waste is something that I've never liked, wasting things. Even, you know, I've been doing this for like, you know, how long? I don't know, 20 years. And I've never liked to waste anything. Sometimes the stuff goes to the client. Sometimes we give it to we give it to charities and things who might use the materials that are left over. I've given some things like that Italian Vogue story, which is there, which has got all the stripes. Lots of that set went to a guy that I know that makes that works in adventure playgrounds, and we gave all that perspex to him, and he used it in an adventure playground. Colville are going to use, like I said, they're going to use the set as a kind of point of sale. Often we give things to people. If anyone on set wants anything, people get things, you know, and often people do. Like often photographers' assistants and stuff, they will take things to make their own shoot. You know, if there's bits of material left or whatever, they will say, okay, I'll take that bit of mirror, I'll take that bit of, because, you know, we also have kind of quite a lot of stuff that doesn't make it in front of the camera, but is sort of, we need to use for practical reasons. So we give all of that stuff away. We really like to find a home for everything. You know, we're really careful.
Amazing. So you studied fine art at university and now work in fashion. What do you find are the crossovers and differences between the two genres?
You know, like I was saying to Alice earlier on, I did my degree at Goldsmiths a tiny bit late. I was kind of a mature student, kind of. I think I was 20 maybe when I started my degree, or maybe 21. But it was a long time ago. I think I graduated when I was about 26, and I'm about to be 50 next month. So nearly 25 years ago. And art and fashion were just beginning to kind of have more of a sort of, in a way, more of a relationship, you know. There was more of a crossover where fashion brands were like inviting artists to do things for them. And that was sort of like that love affair between the two, I feel, was kind of starting to happen, but it's happened so much more now. You know, I think that I'm really glad that I studied fine art, because it gave me quite a good, I suppose, just understanding of especially spatial stuff, because I was interested in installation. You know, I mean, I made film, but I made film as installation. I was always interested in objects, and I also made photography, and I always kind of wanted to make something to put in the photograph. I was always interested in kind of creating a new reality, sort of, but still seeing something familiar as well. And so I was interested in sculptural things, but more as installation, kind of as a kind of, yeah, like I was interested in those things. And so I did a lot of studying of other people's work, I saw a lot of things. I studied a lot of, when I say studied, you know, I just sort of consumed a lot of art at that time, like 4 or 5 years of just consuming imagery. And And I think that still influences me now, all of that stuff, and some of the things that I loved from a very early age, I still love now. And I don't look at fine art that much. I don't look at contemporary fine art very much now. I think I find it a bit daunting. I'm not really sure what's going on with it. I suppose I kind of look at design quite a lot, as in, I suppose I look at kind of graphic design and interior design and architecture and film, and I look at all sorts of different things and draw on those things, and fashion, and definitely sculpture and installation, I think, and painting. I mean, all of it, really. I draw on it all for all different reasons at different times. So I hope that goes some way to responding to that question.
Perfect, thank you. So how has lockdown affected your work and the creation of your content?
Well, so we stopped working last March. Like, we just sort of, I suppose, like everyone, we were just like, is this really happening? What is this thing? And then suddenly my agent said that they were closing their office, and me and Alice were in the studio. It was kind of like, okay, well, and then obviously there was a kind of really an instruction, wasn't there, just to stay at home. So from that point, Alice went home and I went home, and we just stayed at home, and there was no work, there was no, the phone, the emails would stop coming in, and we kind of knew everyone was in the same boat. So really I just stopped working and concentrated on my sort of home life. And then of course, there is a feeling of like, oh, what's happening? And, we need to carry on and produce things and be, still kind of be doing stuff. So I got asked to do a bit of editorial, and I made a few collages, and I painted my window in my house, and I kind of and then before we knew it, sort of June came along, and I think July I did Off-White. So I mean there was quite a period where we didn't work, but at the same time it went quite fast, and I was busy doing other things. And then I think since we've been in this kind of half lockdown where we can work if we need to, then the way we've adapted is Alice works at home and I work from home or in the studio. And if we are shooting, we sort of respond to briefs and come up with ideas and put budgets together and stuff from home. But then when it comes to actually prepping the job, we have been coming in, because really that's the only way it's not the only way we can work. And I think, when we were prepping for this job last week, Alice was working on her own in the studio because I wasn't well. And I was just at home drawing and kind of feeding through things to her, and we were chatting, which proves, it's definitely possible to sort of, to do that even when you're prepping a job kind of thing. So I think it's just made us just, use Zoom more and kind of do that, communicate with one another via Zoom essentially, but hasn't changed the way we think, really. I think in a way we haven't thought about it that much, because we've just been trying to adapt, and just kind of getting on with it, really. And we're used to things being up and down as well, because even though, like I said, I've been doing this for a long time, and I've been pretty much consistently working for a long period of time, we also have periods where there's no projects, so we, there'll be a period where, we have nothing on the table. So we find, because we run a business, and we have to make sure that all the things that go into running that business, from having Dropbox to having paying people that work with us, or making sure that we respond to emails of people that are requesting to come in and work with us as an intern. Or this year, Alice and I did an internship via Zoom, really, for a student, so we've got other things going on in the studio, updating the website, all sorts of things that are not to do with necessarily doing a job at the time. And we've been busying ourselves with those things as well, researching things. And actually there's quite a lot of projects that come in that we have to cost for and even respond to that don't happen as well. There's probably, I've never done a percentage, but there must be easily, 30% of the briefs that come in never happen. So we're quite busy often doing things that never come to anything. But again, we're used to that.
So what skills do you think are important within your role now, and what skills are you looking to acquire next?
I think the skills that are important in my role is being very flexible, being willing to really kind of be able to respond quite quickly to things that come in, to be able to respond in a practical sense, but also with ideas, you know, quickly, to be able to sort of judge what a client wants, being sort of very resourceful, you know, like being able to say, I don't know how to do that, but I'll find out, you know, because again, if you look at, you know, what the screen that Alice is sharing, you've got, you know, anything from like inflatable kind of structures to, you know, a film on the side of a mountain, of a kind of, you know, structure coming together. And they all require quite different problem solving skills, but really it's just a determination that it's possible to do anything if you just ask the right questions and kind of if you ask the right questions and look in the right places and kind of don't give up, find dead end, or when, you know, you just kind of keep going. So that, you know, those are some of the skills. Yeah, I mean, I'd like to carry on learning more really about what makes a good image, what makes good design, you know, becoming more confident with how to develop and move through different kind of design languages, kind of to remain open and not sort of, I suppose, scared of new technology and new things, you know, not kind of throwing out the baby with the bathwater, because I think there's a lot of things about the way things are going with consumerism and stuff that is kind of scary, but I also think there's a lot of brilliant things, and I think technology isn't, you know, it's not black and white. There's lots of grey, and there's lots of really great things about technology. And I mean, already it's changed. I mean, I was saying to Alice, I think you asked me another question a bit further along, saying what was your first brief, and one of the things which we'll get to was like what was called, I termed pre-internet, like it was before the internet was around, you know, that. So I've that, you know, the idea of making imagery that never went on the internet, it went into magazines, you know, and that was our main platform, magazines. So in the time I've been working, even like, you know, how we brief people, how we share information, I mean, it was all on the phone. It wasn't via email. You couldn't send a file to someone, you know, like a huge file of imagery. Or I never worked, I mean, people did, but I didn't work with pictures or anything at the beginning. I just used to like get an image from something and trace it back to someone. You know, also, you know, so things have changed a lot in the time that I've been working, and they've sort of changed in a way that I haven't noticed to a degree. And hopefully I will adapt and continue to adapt to changes, because that's what you want, until I don't want to, or I want to take a different direction, really, you know. But it's really interesting to meet young people. That's why I'm interested in teaching, really, is because it's interesting to know what you guys think, you know, about all of this.
So the next question was, what was your first solo commission or your job?
Well, you know, so my first job was out of school. I left school at 16 and I didn't have any A levels, or I got very, very few O levels as well. I wasn't a wild child at all, because I was quite sensible, but I wasn't really interested in school. I was really into going out to clubs and fashion, and I was very into Vivienne Westwood, and I happened to know her son through just clubbing, and I got a job in World's End, and so that was my first job in World's End. I worked there, you know, straight from school as just an assistant in the shop, and I loved it. And then from there, I went and lived in New York, and I was a stylist assistant for a bit. And then I came back and continued sort of doing bits and bobs in London along the same lines, but then decided I wanted to study. So I then went and did A levels and a foundation and a degree. And then when I came out of my degree, there was not like one moment, you know, of having my first commission or whatever. What was quite key was that when I was still, I think, at university, I was offered a job doing window display, which I sort of turned my nose up a bit, because it was for a brand that I didn't love, but they were offering to give me this, like, I was changing the windows every 2 weeks, which was a great opportunity because it really kept me on my toes and I had to keep thinking of ideas. And I did it all myself. I thought of the ideas, I hung it, I sourced all the materials, and I was really, it was really a really good thing to do. But I always thought, this isn't what I want to do. I think I wanted to be a filmmaker. I wanted to make music videos. And I was also writing not scripts, but treatments for music videos. And I had representation as a music video director. And I used to write loads and loads of treatments and, only get some of them. And I made a music video for Oasis, which was quite, at the time, I mean, it was a B-side. I think it was a B-side, but it was quite a big, exciting thing at the time. And that was, and I also made a film for a fashion label that I used to design prints for as well. So at that time, I was doing window display, print design, some music video direction. I was doing lots of different things, but I do remember doing this film for this label, Seraph, that I worked with.
Do you want me to put it up, Rachel?
Yeah, I made this little film. It's on Instagram.
This is it.
And it was projected for the show in Shepherd's Bush Empire, like on the stage. And there was these, 3 projections of 16mm film being projected, and the girls were kind of walking out to it. And I remember thinking at the time, if I can do this, like, I don't have to do anything else. That's it. I've kind of not arrived, but I fulfilled my creative sort of ambitions, and, but of course that wasn't the case. I did it. And then I wanted to do more things and more things. And you never really feel like you've achieved. You never have one thing that you go, oh, now I don't need to do it anymore, or I've really done everything I need to do, kind of thing. It just doesn't really work like that. But so that, I would say, this is was quite a moment for me. That was one of the moments for me.
So you have a long working relationship with Hermès, producing sets, immersive spaces, and digital animations. What have been your favourite and most challenging projects?
Well, I suppose favourite and challenging are not necessarily the same thing, although they are, like, because when you come through a challenging project, you are very relieved that you've pulled it off, and you've learned a lot, and you've learned a lot, which is really good. So in that way, you could say that it's quite enjoyable to be challenged. But I mean, I would say probably the most challenging project I did for them was the Men's Universe thing, because it was such a long, as in we worked on it for 6 months. It was a very big scale, it was a huge event, which incorporated lots of different ideas. Like, we had to think about kind of interactive ideas. We didn't do the technology. There was separate people doing that, but we had to come up with concepts for how the illustration could come to life with the product. And, it was kind of a multifaceted brief, and there was lots of people working on it, but I was working with David Lane on it, and we were coming up with the sort of overarching concepts for everything. And then there was like specialists coming in to do, like, this interactive technology. And even there was people dedicated to only working with the product, like, how to not the concept, but how to kind of fix that onto, into the installations and stuff. So we had loads of support and help, which was brilliant. But it was such a big project, and the budget was huge in terms of, producing it. So it was quite a big, it did feel like quite challenging. But my favorite project I think I've done for Hermès is the Dubai window, partly because it's just a very satisfying design that came together very smoothly as well. Like, sometimes you have an idea that you have it and it just works, that it works in your head and everything slots into place because the kind of form and the idea are sort of seamless. Like, this was about, and this very much came from the architecture of the store being this kind of long, thin, sort of panoramic space that was very narrow. So I thought immediately about using paper, which is what you're seeing there. It's card, really. I think it's laminated together. GF Smith, actually, Millie, that card. And so basically it's like, okay, let's hang the paper and then let's cut into the paper in different ways to create the display for the product. And every time you cut a different shape across a multiple of sheets and hung them at a distance between one another, they became like little three-dimensional spaces within these flat sheets. And it was just very satisfying to do it. And so we designed it on screen, and then it was very easy to design on screen in 3D. And then we tweaked it. We added those perspex shelves. We created a hanging system and a way that the paper could hang on the hanging system at exact intervals, kind of thing. So the idea was very simple, but working out how it could hang in a way that was very unobtrusive, that you didn't see really anything, that it sort of floated, that took more time, but we worked it out and it was really very satisfying. And it was in Dubai, and I didn't go. I just sent Anna, who was working with me on it, who drew it. She went out and installed it with Dave and some crew in Dubai. So that was very, satisfying from that point of view, that it was something that could, we tested it in London. We had a section of it and tested it, and we knew it was all working. And then we sent it off. We packed it up and sent it off, and it arrived in Dubai, and it all worked out.
Right. So how do you find new clients, or do they find you? And who would you like to work with next?
So I have an agent who sort of actively, I suppose, promotes my work. But, agents can't really go cold calling on, they have to have connections. And I think, so part of it is you choosing an agency that is right for you and that have the kind of client list, that have the kind of clients that you would like to work with, and that also have the kind of artists that you like to work with, because they then attract the clients as well that you want to work with. I mean, and this isn't sort of really premeditated. It does happen to a degree, kind of organically. So you have an agent that sort of represents you and has your work on their website and has a network and has clients. And then obviously I have my own website. And then through working with different people, different photographers, different art directors, you become, you build up your, your network and your list of people that you work with. And it kind of goes from there. It just sort of goes from there. So it's hard to say. We don't really, at the studio, we don't really contact anyone about working with them. And I think my agent does to a degree, but in a way only if they know that it's a sympathetic kind of, potentially relationship. What's really important is just doing editorial and personal work that people can see and are then able to say, oh yeah, I really like that. Let's think about her for this, So that, when I first started, that's what I did. I just did lots of editorial, and I was really picky about the things that I did so that I could kind of establish quite a strong direction, which then people started to respond to, if you see what I mean.
Mm-hmm.
Sophie, sorry, just to interrupt before you go on to the next question. Rachel, can I just ask a bit more about working with agencies?
Yeah.
I just wondered at what point in your working career you became aware of agencies and how you kind of signed up or were signed up to it. And I wondered if you thought the role of agencies was changing, was maybe less important with more social media being used. I don't know.
Well, I was, like I said, sort of in my late 20s after I finished my degree, I was experimenting with lots of different things. And it wasn't until somebody approached me, and I was very aware because I was doing editorial and I was working with lots of people, and I was also going out a lot and meeting people that were working in the similar industry, and a lot of them had agents, and I was like, oh, I want one of those, I want an agent. But I wasn't sure really what I wanted to do. So I couldn't really get an agent until I decided what I wanted to do. And then in the end, actually someone approached me and said to me, I'd like to represent you. But, and we had a chat, and she kind of said, she said, what do you want to do? Because, you're doing all sorts of things. And she said to me, I think you should do set design because I think you're really, really talented. She said, I think you're really good at that. And there's not that many people doing it. Like there's a lot of photographers, because I was also shooting. I did a bit of editorial myself as a photographer, and she was like, there's so many photographers. It's so expensive, you can get into a lot of debt as a sort of photographer starting out if you're doing editorials, because you have to kind of bankroll everything. And she said to me she didn't think I was a very good photographer either, and because I didn't have any training, I didn't know really about lighting or anything. So I kind of just took her lead, and I joined her agency. She was at Big Active at the time, and I joined, and I just started working kind of immediately, and it just went from there. So I think she was very formative in terms of her feedback of my work and in sort of organizing me, I suppose. And then I think she was important. I think it's important. It's good to have an agent, because to negotiate your own fees and to kind of protect yourself in terms of the working environment. Like with me, I was shooting, and I had to have a contract, so it was clear what it was that I was delivering, all of that stuff. They took care of all of that. And they also went out to meetings and promoted me. And then I then took some time out, and then I went with a new agent maybe about 8 years ago or so. And I think my second agent has actually been, I think it's been a different experience, because there was more people on the roster. So it's more of a kind of, it's a bit of a family in a way. We work with some of the photographers there. I think people on the outside perceive you as being part of this, like a stable, like you're at this kind of place, and the agency has its own identity, and you have an identity within that. And I think that stuff's quite important. And for me, and it might be a bit old school, and maybe you guys will do this kind of differently, but most people, whether you're a makeup artist or an actress or a script writer or something, generally people have some sort of agent, manager person who is kind of, promoting you, looking after the business side. I mean, I look after my own business, but there's certain things that I feel I benefit from having an agent. And obviously you pay an agent, they get a cut of what you earn, but I think it gives you peace of mind in terms of being paid as well. Like, you don't have to chase money. You chase your agent, but you don't chase the client, So there's there's a buffer between you and the actual client. And I sort of don't really feel like clients like to deal with you with money direct in a way. I think there's something about that I don't know. I think that everybody's kind of quite comfortable with having people in between.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks, Rachel. There's really interesting benefits that you covered that perhaps we don't really speak about on our programme. So thank you. That really opened that up. Sorry, Sophie, I'll let you get back on.
Which publication did you or do you enjoy working with most, and why?
Well, I don't work with any one publication regularly. I work, it changes all the time, Yeah, I don't, but generally, the publications, I will decide to do something based on the publication being a good platform and creating work in general that I feel that I'd like to be associated with. So I mean, probably German Vogue is the magazine that I've worked for done most editorials for. I've done quite a lot for Gaumont as well, but then I've shot for Italian Vogue and Luncheon and Rika and M. Le Monde and lots of different magazines, but not necessarily in repeat,
Okay, so how important is sustainability to you and the industry in general?
It's very important to me, and I think the industry I think the whole world is catching. I'm not saying catching up like I'm the leader in it at all, but I just see it all the time now. Everywhere I look, people are talking about it. People are sort of giving it. It's certainly being spoken about. Whether it's being acted upon, I don't know, but it's definitely being spoken about. And I think there's a huge awareness around it. And I think, even as an example, my agents who, produce the shoots that we do, even like maybe 3 or 4 years, I don't know now, time is a bit strange, but maybe, quite recently, I remember being on set and going, oh, look at all these plastic bottles and look at all this waste. And, and now we go and everyone's got their own water bottle and, the lunch is vegan and, there's a proper recycling bin for, everything. And, my agency are really making an effort to really be as unwasteful as possible. And I think I know from brands, they talk about maybe building in, things being recyclable beforehand. Some brands do. They certainly, are interested in that. And I mean, even, one of my clients invited me to a kind of like, what was it? Like a kind of workshop where various designers that work for them, set designers that work for them were invited, including myself, to have a kind of discussion with a company that specializes in sustainable materials about turning their windows into, completely carbon neutral, by now, kind of thing. So like that, and that was a big brand and someone that really wanted to think about that, So I think that is across the board. Well, no, it's not. I don't know that it's across the board, but it's definitely on the table, and it's really important to us. It's very important to us, yeah.
So much of your work is situated in objects and physical environments, but you've also worked with digital and moving image. How do you see the balance shifting between these channels post-COVID?
Well, it's difficult to say, isn't it, when post-COVID will be, because we know it's not a sort of hard before and after. It's probably a very sort of gradual transition to whatever it is that we are going to. I mean, of course, we all want to be able to move freely and have contact and socialize and have social gatherings, but I don't know what that's going to look like, because I think that's just all very pending, isn't it? Depending on how the numbers are and how the vaccine works and stuff. But I think people will be tentative. And, I think probably knowing that you can communicate without gathering, or you can gather in smaller, groups, and maybe people will continue to create more sort of intimate experiences, more outdoor experiences. And also I think because of the kind of nature of COVID being, I know that there is definitely discussion around it being linked, to the sort of encroachment of the man-made world into the natural world, and the sort of borders being of concern, you know, of how viruses pass. And I mean, I'm not saying that's a direct thing, but I think just the awareness of our impact, I think, on the world, and how we kind of can minimize that whilst still pursuing the things that we're all interested in, especially in this field where we're interested in communication and in visual language and also in just creativity, and how, you know, that's an important part of our lives. But how do we make that how do we do that responsibly, so that we are, you know, looking at the bigger picture? And I think it's, you know, definitely making people question that and come up with some really interesting solutions, you know. Yeah.
So this is the last question. Could you please advise us on applying for internships in art direction or set design?
I think just, you know, look at the people that you're, you know, look at the industry, the landscape, you know, the kind of look at things that you like, you know. And I suppose you do that online, but also in magazines and in, you know, depending on what areas you're interested in, there's a lot, you know, that you can be you can find out through researching people that make work that you like. You know, look at the teams, look at if you consistently like work that has the same kind of teams involved, then you're obviously attracted to, you know, certain art directors or set designers or creative directors. And you look at that work, you know, you get your handful of kind of names together, and maybe then you'll discover more names that those people are associated with, and then you just approach those people, you just write to them and you say, you know, you tell them. I mean, what I would advise you, because people write to us, you know, we get a fair amount of people writing to us asking us for internships, and I would kind of say that what I respond to mostly is visual stuff, you know, because if there's lots of words, or I respond to visual stuff, and I also respond to really clearly laid out skill sets. So it's like, if someone has certain software, you know, skills, or making in whatever way, just be really clear about what your skills are, but also that you are just out of school, college, you know, and that you don't have the experience. Just be very approachable, be very polite, and try and make it more about, not so much about you and more about the person that you are approaching. Because I think people are really busy, and they are, you know, often juggling lots of things. They want to be able to look at something quickly, something beautifully presented, simple to look at, very polite. You know, thank someone for their time for reading the email. Just be really, really polite, and and keep it short in a way. And I think visuals are really powerful, because you can just look at them. And if you think, you know, I would say in a way, less is more as well. Don't put loads of stuff in. Just put the stuff that you think is really strong, and just be really clear, yeah, about your skills. And if you don't have, and also say, you know, I would really like to come in and meet you. Because I feel, for us anyway, we always ask to meet people, because somebody might have, you know, often, you know, it's amazing the amount of skills that people do have coming out of, you know, just generally. If you meet two people and just get on with one of them better, you like the look of them, or they just like the way that they, for some reason you like them, then you'll probably invite them to come and do something, you know. So I think asking if you can come in for a chat, you know, and being flexible and saying, when would that be good for you, and all of that stuff. I think those are good things to keep in mind.
That was amazing. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your time. It's been brilliant. Just really
you.
great. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sophie. Thank you, Millie. Bye.
Thank you,
everyone.
Alice.
Bye.
Bye.